One thing I see in the market, in the real estate, in the economy, is beach property should escalate in value noticeably over the next decade or two. It's 2020 right now. I see a lot of my neighbors, I'm at or around 40 years old, a lot of my age demographic with young kids are talking about buying, going to the beach. It's especially a topic right now during the pandemic, but even without that, many of us are saying, I want to get to the beach, I want a second home. And it's going to drive up the demand for beach property, specifically because the millennials are right behind us. They're coming along and they have a huge head count. There's a lot of them, and they're all going to be thinking the exact same thing 10, 20, 5 years from now. And when they do, they're going to be looking, and the price of beach property is going to go up and up and up. There's only a limited supply, and more. In addition to that, you have the generational wealth that I recently spoke on, which is going to give these millennials more assets in their hand as family assets, an inheritance that may come in the next 10 or 20 years for some. And when they do, hey, now we can afford this. Hey, now we can afford that. They're going to put it in things that they prioritize. And over the next 20 years, starting now, I see a higher and higher demand for beach property ownership and beach trips, especially for cities that are a couple hundred miles from the coast. You can go for a weekend, you can go for a week, and it's not like you're driving hours and hours and hours to get there. 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour drive is very acceptable for most families to say, all right, let's go down to the beach. You're also going to get that generational wealth where these properties are not going to be sold and turned over as much. It's going to be, all right, we want a beach cottage, we want to stay there, we want our kids to use it, we want to keep it. Those waterfront properties especially are going to say, all right, we don't want to sell this, we don't ever want to sell this, this is going to be in the family for generations. That means the supply, from a supply-demand standpoint, is going to be lower in the future. There's going to be less of these properties on the market for people to buy that want to. I don't know when it's going to hit. I don't know to what impact, but I see it in my surroundings with clients, friends, family, neighbors that I'm talking to, that this is a trend that's starting and will probably, in my guesstimation, last for at least another decade or two. And beach properties will go from expensive to insanely expensive. And those who can afford it, which will be a larger and larger percent of the population, will buy it, and they are very unlikely to regret it because they should have good incomes, good cash flows, good net worths, and be responsible with their money, because that top 10, 20, 30, 40% of the population is fairly disciplined. Now, there are certain scenarios where that could go south, and there's always going to be recessions and recoveries. But beach property is one of those things where I say, yes, this is a good long-term play for someone who can afford it, especially if you can buy one without leverage, without debt. It gives you a much stronger position if I'm wrong. Don't take this as investment advice, do your own research, but I see it as an economic trend over the next decade or two that should play out if I'm correct. I'm Justin Struble with BSG Advisors. I'm not a broker, I'm a fixer.